Holly Edwards and her brother are homeless. Every week, £562 of ratepayers' money is spent on this crowded hotel room for the family. In just 3 days, they trapped 60 cockroaches in the room. The family are getting desperate.
To be able to see my children happy and healthy and not worrying about things crawling on them in the night and not worry that I'm poisoning them every time I feed them. That's all I want.
Basically just some stability in their life.
The total income to London hoteliers this year for accommodation for the homeless would be £100 million. This hotel group overcharged the London Borough by £250,000 in just 6 months. While local authorities are unable to cope with the pressure of the increasing number of homeless families, a new type of hotelier is making money out of the chaos. Hotels for the homeless is a booming industry. As the queue of homeless has increased, local councils in desperation have used hotels as emergency accommodation, often placing whole families in one room for months at a time.
In London generally, because of the appalling homelessness situation, councils have been left with no alternative but to accept the terms dictated by hotel owners. The law says you have to find a family somewhere to stay if they are homeless, and if you've got nowhere else on a Friday evening, you've got to find them a hotel room, and if that means accepting particularly high costs, you have to do it. The law leaves us no alternative.
What has emerged is a new sort of hotelier who's found that homeless families can be more profitable than tourism. Mr. Guha Nawab is one hotelier who specialized in homeless families. He saw the potential for a profitable business more than 10 years ago. This row is now private flats, but back in the 1970s they were bought up by Mr. Nawab. Neighbour Julie Ollington watched his progress.
That was the first house he bought on the corner, and he gradually bought all these houses down to number 84 here. And he knocked corridors right the way through, from the corner house down to number 84.
As he progressed down the street, he knocked through walls and moved in homeless families without correct planning permission. One night, there were 140 people sleeping in these 5 buildings.
I was amazed. They had bedrooms in the baths. They had mattresses actually stuck in the bath. And the rooms, the large rooms in these Edwardian houses have been divided, and there were people sort of in each room with these hard-board partitions up. I was so upset when it all happened. I was at a loss to know what to do. And I just couldn't believe that the council were unaware of what was going on and that they hadn't sanctioned all this. And then one day, I received a letter from Wandsworth Council saying they'd received an application to convert the premises into a hotel. I just couldn't believe it. This has been going on for 2 years. The man had absolutely destroyed 5 houses, and yet the council were then asking us if we had any comments to make about them granting him planning permission for a hotel.
Wandsworth Council contested his planning permission. But who was his main client, paying him to fill up his rooms with homeless families? Wandsworth Council.
It was just absolutely amazing, the rubbish that was strewn around inside and the filth and the mess, that people could live in there and the council could pay them money to keep the people in there. It's just a mystery to me.
Mr. Nawab accepted bed and breakfast homeless here until in 1977 a public inquiry found that he shouldn't be using the premises as a hotel. But by then he'd received more than 3 years' income from it. Undaunted, Mr. Nawab moved a mile up the road to the north side of Clapham Common and started taking in homeless people. In 1980, Lambeth Council Planning Department started asking questions about the use of these buildings, and they soon attracted the attention of the Environmental Health Department.
200 pages of notices under the Public Health Acts and Housing Acts and other acts on Mr. Nawab's premises, alleging dangerous wiring. We have children living in premises with dangerous wiring, defective floors that people could fall through, vermin, unfit rooms, ceilings need replacing, stairways need replacing, fire doors need putting on, no means of fire escape. People are living in these premises in danger. And yet, because he's found this way of avoiding and delay, he and many other people can get away with it.
You'd have piles of dirty nappies in little bins all overflowing all over the carpets, and you'd have food, rotten food, maggots in the bins, things like that, broken windows.
Anne Wedderburn tried to persuade Mr Nawab to improve conditions.
The managers knew the conditions and knew people were struggling, but he wasn't concerned of that. He was only concerned about the loss of heat and the loss of money all the time. The issue was always on money. How much money he would lose if he was to keep the heating on, how much money he would lose if he was to do anything about repairing anything. And yet he used to charge so much rent, you know, for the single rooms and the double rooms with the family.
There was a long-running dispute between Mr Nawab and Lambeth Council as to whether he had correct planning permission for these buildings. After 4 years, the Secretary of State said no, Mr Nawab couldn't use the premises as a hotel.
He's played the system, he's done nothing illegal, but meanwhile, people are living in appalling conditions and taxpayers and ratepayers are paying him hundreds of pounds, thousands of pounds over every month, year in, year out.
And London boroughs continued to send families to the Access building. Over the years, environmental health officers had found pigeon infestation, premises in a filthy or unwholesome condition. Mr Nawab did carry out some repairs, but in 1986, Southwark Council had reports of locked fire doors and extremely cold conditions. They were paying up to £500 per family per week, so they sent a housing officer to investigate.
In the basement area, we found a family with 2 young children who couldn't even heat up hot water for her children because there was no kitchen in the basement. She had to go out to a local cafe to ask for hot water for the children. Other things like the smell, you couldn't actually write down what one of the buildings smelt like because of the stench of urine on the hall and staircase. It actually permeated everywhere.
What did Mr Nawab say to you when you told him of these complaints?
Well, he said that they were in the process of upgrading. In fact, they'd almost completed all the work of the hotel and work in the kitchens, and it was against his morals and conscience to actually not have good conditions in the hotel. But this was really belied very much by the conditions we found there. It was certainly not a hotel that you or I would stay in, and yet we were placing families with young children, single vulnerable people in that hotel.
What did you conclude about Mr Nawab's management of that hotel?
It was certainly a hotel we no longer wished to move. We were already under instructions from councillors not to use the hotel, and this just reinforced what we were trying to do.
But although Southwark Council boycotted Mr Nawab's hotels, other boroughs, desperate to place families, are still using them. And Mr Nawab is still in business across the Common at the New Belvedere and the Dudley. As of October '87, he had 43 families there, paid for by Wandsworth Council. We contacted Mr Nawab and asked him for an interview. He referred us to his lawyer, Mary Lee. She told us that he was an ordinary businessman and that Mr Nawab had gone into the homeless business by chance when several London boroughs had asked him to accommodate families. She said he hadn't made any money out of his hotels. But last year, the New Belvedere was described by an estate agent's brochure as a very lucrative business, producing excellent profits from an average weekly take of £4,500. And Mr Nawab's Access Hotel Group has gone on to start a chain of restaurants. The first, the Duke of India, has just opened in Tooting. The system that has provided so handsomely for Mr Nawab is in disarray. In London alone, £100 million will be paid to hoteliers this year to accommodate 8,000 families. Increasingly, families joining the queue are mortgage defaulters or people who've fallen behind with the rent. Just 6 months ago, Holly and Aidan had a home and an ordinary family life. Then disaster struck.
Everything was going really well for us, wasn't it? We were both working, just starting to get things together that we needed for many years. And then it all just fell apart.
Kick out as far as you can.
Anne was badly burned in an accident and John lost his job. Their debts were mounting and they got £269 behind in their housing association rent. they were sent a letter threatening eviction.
We just panicked.
I really didn't know what was going to happen. It was just a very frightening feeling.
In the absence of good legal advice, they found themselves homeless. They went to the council and at the first meeting told them a false story, but they returned 10 days later and told the truth. The council agreed to consider their case and sent them to one of the increasing number of hotels for the homeless. This is one of the better ones. The family now live in one room. The kitchen's in the basement and it's 5 floors to bring food and hot dishes up to the room.
Just living in one room, 4 people. It's hard, very hard. They're paying £560 a week. I think it's disgusting.
Do you tell people where you live?
Some people, but my teacher told me not to because they say that you live in a dump.
You just can't do anything. You just can't imagine. You can't even go to the toilet without getting dressed first. You can't even be in your own room undressed. You've got to be careful all the time in case somebody walks in. I think it's really hard for the children because if they want to play with their games or practice their recorder, because your nerves feel bad, you're always telling them to be quiet. You know, don't play that now, do it later on, I can't stand it now.
The one room is the only place in the hotel where the children are allowed to play most of the time. The family also eat, wash their dishes and sleep here. They've seen cockroaches in the room. The toilet down the corridor is shared by 12 people.
Every time I go to the toilet, I have to stand on the seat in case one of them bite me.
One of what?
One of the little creatures, because they crawl about and I jump on the seat.
What do you have to do if you go for a bath here?
We just have a quick bath with the jug, and then we get out.
Why is that?
Because every time we go in the bath, it's really freezing cold.
It's 7 o'clock. Time for bed.
Tickly feet.
You can wash your hands first, Aidan?
Yeah, hang on. Yorkshire Terrier.
It's like being punished for being homeless, being stuck here with, you know, just in one room. You can't move around, you can't give the children any freedom. You've got no freedom yourself. It's really a strain, isn't it?
Double dare, love kiss, or promise.
Aidan, you stop it and just lay down. You can't force them to be quiet all the time. They need to run around and scream and shout and do the things other kids do.
There's no time where you can say, right, that is hour, 2 hours out of the whole day. Everybody who's got 2 children knows how hard it is to look after them. And to just have that 2 hours in the evening, you know they go to bed at 8. But you haven't got it. You haven't got a minute to yourself, not a second. The money they're spending on this, they've spent £9,000 on our rent for this place so far. What a waste.
And all the money that's going through here every week, how many houses could that build?
Just one man has got all that money.
There have been attempts to regulate the system, and a new code agreed between London boroughs should bring prices down. But it won't stop the absurdity of paying millions in public money to hoteliers. In the London borough of Tower Hamlets, they were paying £18 million, a seventh of their total budget, to hoteliers. The sums involved were getting so out of hand they called in the auditors. The auditors' confidential report found serious financial discrepancies. The first hotelier under investigation was the Thames Hotel Group. They owned 3 hotels, all were used by Tower Hamlets. Last year, they owned the Glencairn Hotel. It was found by local environmental health officers to be failing in water supply, drainage, means of escape and general state of repair. They served orders on the management. When they failed to comply, they were taken to court and found guilty. But Tower Hamlets were still paying £500 a week to keep families there. And at the same time, their own confidential report found that last year the Thames Hotel Group overcharged the council by £250,000. 1 week they put up their already high charges by an astonishing 40%. the council paid it. They were charging for rooms that were in fact empty, and the council paid the bills.
Councillor Shaw, Tower Hamlets overpaid one hotelier by £250,000. How did that come about?
I think the straightforward answer is through poor administrative systems in our own homeless persons unit. Inefficiency and incompetence, I'm afraid, something which we're now having to put right.
So you're saying your own inefficiency was the main cause?
I think that has to be true. We could say that we are dealing with lots of hotels and a very large number of cases, which obviously doesn't make the job easy, and hoteliers can slip things through, and unless you're very careful, you don't pick them up. But it is down to us, and we've now got to remedy the faults that we've discovered.
The Thames Hotel Group has now refunded the £250,000, but the fraud squad has been called in to investigate allegations about the relationship between the homeless persons unit and the hoteliers they deal with. We went to the third of the hotels in the Thames Group and found that Tower Hamlets are still sending families there. The families invited us in, but were reluctant to be filmed. They'd complained about the bread they'd been given as part of the £400 a week bed and breakfast package. It was 10 days after the sell-by date. One of Britain's leading environmental health officers examined the hotel.
Well, the hotel generally has all the appearance of a rundown hotel. Lots of bits of disrepair. I mean, the whole place is ready to crumble. The typical sort of thing that you might find in the bed and breakfast hotel for homeless people is ad hoc wiring arrangements, which I suppose is a polite way of putting it. I'm not absolutely certain if that is live, but you find that sort of thing in all sorts of places. And we also have here a fuse box, which again I'm certainly not going to touch, but you can see that one of the fuses is damaged. Of course, one of the most frequent causes of fire is electrical failure. So despite the fact that there is a fairly newly installed fire alarm system, smoke detectors, it's far better to actually stop the fire starting in the first place, which means proper maintenance of electrics.
So this could be dangerous?
This is absolutely, yeah, very dangerous.
The environmental health officer then explored the fire exit.
It actually comes down here to what I can only describe as a very steep and winding staircase. Anybody trying to get down there in a panic is likely to end up at the bottom long before they anticipate. And with little children in arms, we've seen lots of little children around. It's dangerous even apart from a fire. And we've got children in this unit here who could quite easily get under this gate and fall down and end up with a broken leg if they're lucky, and a broken neck is more likely. It was a recipe for disaster so far as home safety was concerned.
A suitable place for families?
Certainly not.
We tried to contact Mr. Manick, the elusive owner of the Thames Hotel Group.
We were told you'd be here at 2 o'clock.
We approached the man we were told was running the hotel, who bears a striking resemblance to Mr. Manick.
Mr. Manick, can you explain how you came to overcharge Tower Hamlets?
But despite the poor conditions and the fact that the Thames Group have overcharged them by £250,000, Liberal-controlled Tower Hamlets Council still have families in their hotels.
We don't like to use hotels of that sort, obviously, but you've got to have somewhere to put the families.
The Thames Hotel Group has overcharged you £250,000. They have a poor environmental health track record. Should you not say, now, we will pull all our families out?
You tell me where else we're to put them.
There's been no great increase in the number of families seeking accommodation, but there is a shrinking supply of council houses to place them in.
Last year, you paid a total of £18 million for overcrowded, often squalid conditions. Surely that money could have been spent on building houses?
Well, I wish it could have done, but unfortunately it can't, and those are the laws and regulations that the government lays down for what councils can spend and what they can spend it on. And I only wish that we could just transfer it from spending money on hotels to building homes, but we can't, and that's just what the law says. And all other councils are in exactly the same position and would love to be able to do what you suggest, but unfortunately the government won't let us.
Have you tried to do that?
We have been to meetings with the government on several occasions. I personally have been, and we've put that to them. We've put umpteen suggestions to them on ways of reducing this appalling situation for the families and this appalling financial burden on the council. Unfortunately, they're really not very interested.
The government say they are interested, and they blame local boroughs for inefficiency in their housing policy and leaving too many council houses empty. Desperate to get out of the homeless trap, Anne and John Edwards have tried to find rented accommodation.
Hello, I'm ringing up about your advert in the Standard. Greenford. It's about a 3-bedroom house in Greenford.
Right, would you like to sit this evening?
Yes, it's...
Can I take you? Are you working at all?
No, I'm not working at the moment, but I'm married with 2 children.
Oh, I see. Right, for some reason I'm afraid we don't accept families.
You can't accept what?
We don't accept families.
Oh, you don't accept families?
I'm afraid not. You see, we are an agency.
The answer on 30 calls is consistently no families.
Sorry about that.
All right, thanks very much. Thank you, bye.
Really noticed a dramatic change in Holly especially. She's become very withdrawn. She doesn't talk as much as she used to. And Aidan's in a state of total confusion. I don't think he knows where he is or what's happening.
We keep saying to him, just think back to when we was a normal family. It'll be like that again, and you would have your own friends and things like that, and you can invite your friends back for tea. You can't even do that here. No one wants to let their child come home to tea with you when you're living in a hotel. It's the stigma.
The Edwards set cockroach traps in their room.
I knew there was a lot of the smaller ones in the room, but the big ones are a shock to me. It's horrible.
The traps are supposed to stay down for a week, but after just 3 days, the Edwards had caught 60 in their room.
My son woke up in the night about 1:30 and shouted out, "Mummy, can I have a drink?" And I got up, and when I opened the fridge, I could hear a noise, but when I opened the fridge, I could see this cockroach. It was so big, and half of it was stuck in the trap, and the front part of it was pulling the trap around behind it. It's the most frightening thing I've ever known in my life. It really is. I mean, if I could just stay awake 24 hours a day and make sure they weren't crawling on my children and crawling on our food, then I would.
According to an expert, this level of infestation indicates a public health problem. The Leinster House Hotel told us they had a contract with an agency to ensure pest control and certificates to prove the building was not infested. The management cancelled 3 appointments to see us.
I'd rather you didn't do that. Out! Out!
What do you feel?
Angry, disgusted and helpless. There's just no one you can turn to. Nobody's interested. Anytime we've complained, we've been told that we're in one of the better hotels and to keep quiet.
They do know there's cockroaches in here because I've seen another lady ask them to borrow the Hoover because there's cockroaches in her room. And the manager said, yes, of course you can borrow the Hoover. But nothing about the cockroaches. It's just acceptable. They just accept it.
And tell us again how much the council are paying for this room.
£560 a week.
We've got to live like this. And if we say anything, we'll just be thrown out. If we complain, we're going to just be thrown out.
And if this is, as they say, one of the better hotels, where are we going to end up?
Just a week later, the hotel decided they wanted the Edwards out after they'd made complaints about the management. The council will have to move them to another hotel. They're just one of London's 8,000 families caught in a system which seems hopelessly ill-equipped to help them.